Welcome everyone to Terror Reels.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I'm Steel City Dahmer, and today we're reviewing the last and final movie of the Krueger saga, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Released in 1994, Wes Craven decides to bring Freddy Krueger alive one more time, but this time in our world. We open this nightmare with a new and improved glove being crafted in what looks like a medieval boiler. This hand looks way too high-tech for such a time. Fuck, could you imagine a nightmare movie where Krueger goes back into time? Anyways, Freddy cuts his hand off, but it's really not Freddy. It's an actor during a movie shoot. The builder of the glove is Chase Porter, played by David Newsom. He's Heather's husband and special effects guy in this movie. In real life, Heather's husband is a special effects guy, but he declined to play himself in this movie. Chase takes their son Dylan, played by Myuu Hughes, over to see some of the props and special effects. What kid wouldn't want to see this? Chase's team works on the new Krueger animatronic glove, but it moves on its own. Chase goes to check this out, and it cuts him a good bit. Everyone thinks this is just an electrical problem, but the joke's on them. Chuck and Terry were brutally murdered by this glove. Joke's on us though, because this was all a dream. An earthquake wakes up the family and everyone runs into Dylan's room to make sure he's safe. Dylan notices that Chase's fingers are cut, just like in Heather's dream. He doesn't think anything of this and blames it on the earthquake. They talk about what's going on with Heather and in her nightmares, but since this takes place in the real world, they just think it's due to the stress and all the earthquakes. Heather catches her son watching A Nightmare on Elm Street and turns it off, but he is pissed. Heather gets a phone call from what she thinks is an obsessed fan stalking her Nancy character. Julie, played by Tracy Middendorf, comes to the house to babysit Dylan so Nancy can go to her interview. They're bringing her back into the limelight because it's roughly the 10th anniversary of the release of the original Nightmare on Elm Street. They have a surprise for Heather.
We'll do lunch!
Freddy runs around and plays the crowd as a game show version of the original Nightmare on Elm Street jingle plays. Heather gets a call from Sarah from Noon Line Cinema, and they want Heather to stop by so they can have a chat. She meets with movie producer Robert Shea, who's been all over the Nightmare series, and finally now playing himself. He shoots Heather the idea of starring in a new Nightmare movie, but she isn't all about that because she's a mother now.
Oh, come on, Heather. Kids love horror.
Well, he's not wrong. I loved horror as a kid. Robert also drops some knowledge that Chase has been working on the new prototype glove, kind of like the one that Heather dreamed about. Heather gets home to hear Dylan freak out from the inside of the house. She runs in to find Dylan freaking out from a nightmare. Luckily, Rex was there to save Dylan, even though Rex took some dino damage. Heather calls her husband and tells her about Dylan's freakout. He informs Heather that Chuck and Terry didn't show up for work today, and that makes her suspicious. Chase is more worried about Dylan and the stalker phone calls, and decides he's gonna take a long drive home to his family. But the new and improved glove pops out of the seat and wants to see what that dick do. I guess it wasn't impressed and fucking kills Chase because of it. Heather wakes up on the couch and the doorbell rings. I guess it was all just a dream. Oh, it's the cops. I guess it wasn't just a dream. Heather goes to the morgue to identify the body. The coroner just wants to show her his face. She wants to see the whole thing and sees 4 slash marks in his chest. Chase's funeral is packed full of people from the Elm Street franchise. An earthquake interrupts the funeral and Krueger decides this is the perfect time to get Dylan. This also brings Chase back to life and he wants Heather to join him. Heather's in the movie dead. John Saxon snaps her out of it and she realizes everything is okay. The next day, Heather and John are at the park talking about Dylan and the stalker while Dylan plays. Dylan tries to reach for his dad in heaven on top of the jungle gym. Being a kid, of course, he loses his fucking footing and falls, but luckily Heather runs over and catches him. Back at Heather's house, she gets a strange burnt letter in the mail. Apparently, it's not the first letter, and it is obviously from the stalker. Heather calls up our fucking boy Robert Englund and tells about the new Nightmare movie that Wes Craven was talking about. She talks about her Freddy nightmares and they both share the same vision of the new Krueger. What's also weird about the conversation is that Krueger says that Wes was putting Dylan in the script. Something about reaching for the heaven? Whatever that means. Weird, right? Later that night, Freddy tries to get Heather in her sleep with his new fancy glove. But she wakes up, but Dylan causes a ruckus downstairs. Heather goes downstairs to find Dylan singing the song of the Jump Rope Girls from the original movie, and Heather isn't having it. Dylan isn't going to take her shit tonight though.
First sleep.
Heather falls out of bed because I guess this was all a dream too. She goes back downstairs to see Dylan, saying the same rhyme again, also that he figured out what all the letters mean.
Never sleep. sleeper.
Yes.
I touched him.
This causes Dylan to foam at the mouth and goes absolutely ballistic. Heather takes Dylan to the local hospital. The nurse blames the movies Heather was in for him freaking out. Dylan has to stay overnight, so Heather tells Dylan she won't be too far away. She just passed the highway. Heather drives over to Craven's house, and they talk a bit about the new Nightmare movie.
About the only thing about it that stays the same is what it lives for, really.
What is that?
Oh, the murder of innocence.
Wes starts to talk about how this evil was caught in a story, and this story has been Freddy Krueger. Wes continues to talk about how the evil was caught in a story, and this evil is Freddy Krueger, and he's been contained due to the movie. But since there hasn't been a movie, he's now been set free into our world. Since Nancy was the first person to defeat Freddy in the movies, he's gonna try her to enter into our world. Okay, I guess, Craven. I mean, that sounds pretty dumb. We see part of the script, and it's exactly the conversation we just heard them having. Ooh, spooky.
Whether or not you're willing to play Nancy one last time.
After another earthquake, Heather goes up to her closet and notices that her bedside coffee maker has been tossed across the room and near her closet. As she's puzzling it all together, Freddy jumps out from behind her clothes and they start tussling around the room. His claws get right before he disappears. She rushes over to the hospital and finds that Julie is there to see Dylan. The doctor sees the cuts that Krueger left and Heather blames it on the earthquake. No one else felt this earthquake, and the nurse thinks that she's starting to cut herself. As Heather watches over her son while he sleeps in the hospital, it seems that Krueger has a message for her.
Too late. I'm almost there. Almost there.
Dylan freaks out again in the hospital bubble, and the main nurse figures out a way to calm him down.
Cut this evil out of him.
This was all a dream though, as Heather jumps on the bed. Heather loses her shit, and she goes to find her son, and they all call security, and Heather brings back a call line from the original movie.
Do you have a pass? Screw your pass.
Heather tells Dylan that they're going to go get Rex, but the nurse won't let Dylan leave. Heather puts Julie in charge, and she's going to go get Rex, and we get another call line from the first movie.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Security grabs Heather so that the nurse can have a word with her to see if Heather is crazy or if there's any family history of mental illness, to see if maybe it was passed down to Dylan. The nurse tricks Julie into letting them give Dylan a shot. Julie punches the nurse like a gangster and threatens to stick another nurse with a random syringe. Oh fuck! Since the drugs are doing their job, Dylan can see Krueger behind Julie, and he guts her from behind, pulling her across the walls and ceilings. Another callback to the original movie. This scene dominates. Krueger plays with her body until finally killing her. After some frantic searching, Heather realizes that Dylan is going home. Yep, this drugged up kid is going to have to cross the highway at night to get to their house. After causing multiple cars to swerve at highway speeds, Krueger decides to help Dylan a bit and dangles him over traffic. As Heather gets hit by a car, a billion Freddys walk up and Dylan books it over the fence and makes it home. Saxon's at the house and wants to have a few words with Nancy. Some weird shit's going on.
Why are you calling me Nancy, John?
Why are you calling me John?
He goes into full Nightmare on Elm Street character. He even has a badge, and now he's talking about how Krueger is dead, and how he doesn't want Nancy to lose her shit like her mother did. Oh shit, it's gone in too deep now.
1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
Nancy finds Dylan's sleeping pills leading to his room, like breadcrumbs. Oh no, not Rex. Freddy, you bastard. Knife in hand, Nancy eats a sleeping pill and travels to the medieval boiler room where we started. Nancy hears the iconic screeching of Krueger's glove, along with Dylan's screams for his mom. The first thing Nancy finds down here was a script for exactly what's going on.
The more she read, the more she realized what she had in her hands was nothing more or less than her life itself.
Dylan runs up behind her and almost gets shanked in the face. Suddenly, Krueger grabs Nancy, and they begin to fight it out until Nancy sticks a snake into Krueger's eyes and knocking him the fuck out. They continue to fight, and Krueger almost gets Nancy until Dylan stabs him in the leg repeatedly. Nancy goes to fight Krueger again, but gets tossed into the water, and now Freddy has his eye on Dylan. Dylan runs as Krueger mocks his child.
Mommy! Where's your mommy, Bklyn, huh?
Krueger gets winded somehow until Dylan remembers his bedtime story. He runs and hides into a giant stone. Krueger tries to get him, but he's too fucking big for the door. His arms begin to stretch Armstrong towards Dylan as Nancy begins to wake up. Nancy would have gotten to Krueger, but she's stuck in these stairs like in the first movie. Krueger grabs Dylan and tries to eat him in this super ridiculous effect. Until Nancy stabs him and he cries about it. Nancy pushes Krueger into the giant stove, but not before giving Nancy some time. Eventually, Dylan grabs a knife his mom had and stabs the shit out of his tongue, causing his tongue to retract and knocking him down. They close the door and set Krueger ablaze for one last time, blowing up the entire fucking place too. They hop in the water and get shot out to the end of Dylan's bed. Heather even has her signature gray streak in her hair, and she finds the script and everyone lives happily ever after. There it is, everyone. The final installment of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise with Robert Englund. This series has always held a special place in my heart. Freddy's Dead was my intro to horror movies when I was in grade school, and I never looked back since. I remember being in elementary school, and we had a project to where we had to write to one of our heroes. And while other turds were writing presidents and dumb shit like that, I wrote to Robert Englund. And even got an autographed picture about 2 years later. I'll also never cover that fucking terrible 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Fuck that movie. Fucking stupid ass. Anyways, hope you enjoyed watching the review of the Nightmare on Elm Street series as much as I enjoyed reviewing them for all of you. I'm glad this could be the first full franchise I cover here on Terror Reels, as it holds a special place in my heart. Stay tuned for the next episode of Terrors where I'll be covering 1993 Peter Jackson classic Brain Dead, aka Dead Alive. Thanks for watching.